going to be working now from the back step or reverse half guard. So a very common way people will enter this is they've gone for something like a knee cut and the person on bottom gets an underhook and they step back over the top. Okay, so they end up in this position here. So I'm facing now with my hips upwards. Ari's got my leg track. So it is a form of half guard, but they're in the back step. Some people will look for this early as well. You get some people who come in to pass and they look to just back step and try to pass from here straight off the get-go. So what kind of passes are they looking for? Well, usually they're looking similar to the crossbody. They're often looking to get underneath this arm and this arm as well. So they want their hips high and elbow high to kill this space. Okay. Now I control the position between Ari's shoulders and his hips. If I free my leg, I've got control. Okay. So, and that's usually what they will look to do from here. They used to try to kick their leg free and come out into side control. It's possible, especially in no-gi, that people start looking for a leg lock. They might look to pick the leg up, get into the saddle position. So we'll talk about how we would defend someone doing that. And they might also take this far arm back to the other side and then step over, looking to come into a deep knee cut with an underhook. That's something we need to be aware of too. Now there's a whole series we could do on preventing the back step. It's a move called the Jedi Mind Trick. It's quite complicated and it's more based off like when you're playing an offensive half guard underhook game. So consider that more an offensive thing. These techniques we're covering a lot of them are attacks, but they're from kind of defensive position where you've been forced into that position. So we've got 3 options we're going to cover in terms of escaping this position. One is to frame away and potentially work into the berimbolo. One is to use hooks to start to escape the position or potentially get on top. And the other is to try to work some tight back control options by scooting around the corner. So the first thing I want to talk about is my leg position. This is really counterintuitive, but I do not want to face Ari. If I face Ari with my hips, it's actually much easier for him to scoot away. And if you picture his base, the more he can move his hips away from me, that's his base. It's very hard to take him over the top now. If I try to lift him over the top, I lose it, and his back is further away as well. Okay, so I want to keep his hips closer to me so he's actually easier to sweep over the top. So if we turn, if you look here, if I keep my hips facing this way to my right, move your hips away from me. He's kind of stuck, so stay in position. So you can see he's struggling to stay. He's really probably actually going to come up on top of me and bring his hips even further over the top in a scenario like this. Yeah, he's more likely to come up like this here. But that means he doesn't have much working behind him right now. Okay, so by facing my hips to my right, this is really good. So our plan is to be on our side, and that's where we set up our grips and our leg pummeling. And if we get our legs in the right spot, then it can be okay to fall back to the other side. So if I'm here on my side, I can be working to pummel my legs, and once I have my legs pummeled, then I can start to try to sweep. Just on that, if you just pinch the ankle, which sometimes that's all you can get, but it can be hard to stop Ari from scooting backwards and getting his hips down towards the mat and turning me. Okay, so I often want to collect his knee a little bit by kind of having one leg curling forward. So you can see my top leg gets his knee and my bottom leg extends his foot. So drop your hips to the ground now, and that should be a lot harder. So it's going to be easier if I do this, or sometimes with my bottom leg, doing the same sort of action. Talk about upper body controls. Sometimes Ari might look for a crossface. This is, to me, is not the best control here. It's much better if he's able to get his arm over the top of my arm and block me here. Here I can't use my arms very well. Okay, so if we're in a position like this, I'd be wanting to try to scoot Ari a lot lower down on my body. Okay, having my arms up here is no good. If he has the crossface, then I'm usually trying to frame him away. It's very hard for him to keep enough forward pressure here. So I'm going to be looking to get frames, get inside and start to escape this way. And that's the first escape we're going to cover. So from the crossface position, I'm going to have my hips facing the right And I'm going to start trying to pummel underneath Ari's head. He'll usually have his head low, but it's very hard for him to stop me from pummeling underneath with a good forearm frame. So gripping onto the scapula, elbow and forearm underneath the chin. Okay. From here, I can now, once I have this, I can start like moving my hips away and facing. Okay, so once I have this, I can start moving this way. Okay. Even if Ari holds on to that cross face, he might grip my gi, for example. Usually once I push away, I can swim my hand inside. And if you want here, you can just, frame the chest, frame the bicep, escape and put your feet in front to recover. It is actually a nice berimbolo setup from here. If you manage to frame away, if you can free your knee down and shake your top leg across the top shin, across their hip, you're now basically halfway through a berimbolo. So if I spin underneath now, I'm going to have the back. So again, from the cross face, we're going to face the hips to the side, pummel under the chin, start to face our opponent now, move away, block the cross face, get our hook in front of the hip and drop our knee. Okay, from here, we can bring our shin over the top and try to berimbolo, or just work to frame away and recover. If someone's looking to enter the saddle for a leg lock and sit back to the leg lock from here, basically the way I was turning before, like turning in towards Ari, would start to expose my heel, as long as my knee line is still above the line of his hips. So that would be a bad idea. Okay, so if they sit back for the saddle, you should stay on your side this way, retract your bottom leg, and you can start to get ready to kick your opponent, turn, and free your knee. Okay. Just be wary when you turn away, your opponent might try to take your back, okay? Because you are turning this way and exposing your back. So make sure your foot is ready to kick into their hip. So I'm gonna retract and kick. Okay, now it's very hard. If Ari's trying to take my back, I can kick and try to peel him away and then spin back to face. Okay, so now we'll just talk about using our hooks to recover. When I want to use my hooks, what I actually want is my right foot hooking underneath the knee. Okay, this makes it very easy to lift and very hard for Ari to escape. A huge mistake I see is people hooking just under the ankle and trying to sweep with this. Yeah, well, Ari's about to suck his knee down to the ground, and this happens a lot, and then I end up getting either passed or smashed. Okay. So if you look when I catch the knee and he tries to suck his knee out, I can elevate it and it kind of gets stuck. At the ankle, he can lift his hips and drop his knee out and free. So how do we get that? I want my outside leg to hook the knee, but I can't, there's no way I'm gonna have the flexibility to do that just from here. So what I wanna do is first, sometimes you will use an ankle hook. Always hold their knee in place at first. Sometimes use an ankle hook with the right leg, then the left leg, and the left leg, while my hips face to my right, so I'm facing this way, I start to elevate, and then I can place my hook close to the knee. So once I've got my left hook in, I can lift, keeping my hips facing my right, until I start to get my hook close to the knee. I say close to the knee, sometimes even mid-shin is enough that the knee can't be sucked out, but down near the ankle is no good. Okay, so I wanna do this, and you can hold the knee as well in a scenario like this. Now that I've got that, I wanna lift up, and then I can underhook the leg, if need be. Sometimes this is enough to sweep them over and you get on top. Sometimes you need to lift up, and then you can hook with your arm here and get up. Another really common mistake with this I see is people, when the leg's low, they try and underhook it here. There's no way, if Ari goes heavy with that leg, I can't lift him up, and I'll kind of lose position if I try to get up. Only reach under the leg once you've elevated it high. Okay, once I'm here, and I know I can get up on my arm, do I start to go underneath the leg? Okay. And from here it's too, like Ari can try to stay on top, but, and there's some fancy things you can try to do, but I'm probably gonna end up on top because I'm underneath that leg. So in summary, we turn our hips away, try to get our left hook, or potentially right hook, left hook, and then we work up to get near the knee. From there, replace that with our hand, get up on our elbow, and we can go on top. All right, so if the arm's over the top, we do have an option to work towards the back. So obviously you can see if it's more like a cross face, there's no way you're going to reach towards the back. But if the arm is over the top, there's a chance. Okay. Now you have to work this out based on how close or how far away their hips are. Right now, Ari's hips are kind of far away, and there's a big gap here. When you see this gap here, it's going to be very hard to take the back. One thing that might happen as I look for that is Ari might put his elbow back on the ground on this side. That gives him an underhook. And then you can see I'm starting to get in a really bad position. I've kind of exposed my tricep. He might step over and go towards the back or a knee through pass. So I only really want to do this if I can get close to the hips and cover this space here with my body. Okay? Because now if Ari tries to underhook, you can see that's very difficult. I've closed that gap off. So I'm pulling one hand at the hip, one hand nice and high, and my forearm tries to stop Ari from facing me. So if he tries to face me here, I'm kind of like blocking that with my elbow here. Sorry, just I'll show you if I don't do that, like turn to face me here. You can see that happens, and that will also open my elbow. So if my elbow is open, he can climb higher, and if he's up high, this is not going to work either. You can't go for the back if you're here. So the scenario we might go for this is the back step, but we can pull in nice and tight, forearm across the back, and keep the hips in tight too. One other thing we are going to need for the back take is first of all to step past the knee line. Okay, so this time I am facing in, and I want to hook, so I'm basically hooking the back of the hamstring, not at the calf. Again, what my aim with my leg is to stop Ari's hips moving away. If he moves his hips away, then I've lost everything and any chance at the back. So as I'm holding the hips with my hands, my leg I want to climb my foot high, step my toes on the mat, and then drop my heel back to add extra pressure to this. Okay. So now, without my hands, if Ari tries to scoot away, to move your hips away, he can't. It's going to be more difficult. Like he might be able to without my hands, but it's going to be harder to get that underhook. Okay. If I allow that space, he will be able to get the hips away and then the underhook. Okay. So I'm going to hook. Make sure we climb above the knee, step our toes on the mat. And this is not very good of a squeeze, but once I drop my heel back, so toes on the mat, heel back, it really adds to the squeeze. Okay. So once I have that, I've got one leg controlling Ari. I can now start to take my bottom leg out. I start going like so. Okay. And I keep a back heel here. Okay. Again, if Ari tries to move his hips out, he can't. I can shoot my knee behind his hips and then sit down on that same hip all the way through to my right side. So I'm holding the hips in tight, the upper body in tight. I connect my leg to Ari's leg. To free my leg, I'm going to get up on my elbow so I can drive into him. That allows me to back heel now, curling my leg and shoot my left knee behind. Okay. Once we're here, I don't want him to fall this side. I want to pull him to the other side, and that will expose the back for the back take. In summary, for the back take, our opponent's arm is over the top of our arm. We managed to scoot them down lower, and we happen to be facing in this time. I'm going to reach over the far armpit and with my elbow tight, reach to the hip, pulling my elbow tight, bringing my chest in nice and tight. From here, I change feet so that my leg passes the knee line, step on the ground and pull my heel back. From there, I can get up, back heel, hamstring curl with my right leg as I pull my leg up and shoot it behind. Fall to my right hip, come across, and end up on the back. So linking the techniques from the back step, if we got a crossface and there's not a lot of forward pressure, we're able to get underneath the head, frame away the arm, hip out, put our hook in front of the hip, over the top, and we can either recover back to guard or spin through. If I'm able to, almost immediately I want to be turning my hips to face away. Okay, so when Ari gets in position, I want to face away. This can work whether his arm's on this side or whether his arm goes to the far side. If you're able to get your hooks, work your leg nice and close to the knee, and then you can reach underneath and start to come on top. If you happen to be turned in while this leg is on the far side and the hips aren't too far away, so maybe you've done a good job of keeping his hips close, but he manages to start to turn you in, you might be able to reach to the far side and keep the hip close. From here, we can work to change feet, hook nice and tight with a back heel, arm comes above our head, shoot our leg behind, and start to take the back.
Now looking at the reverse half guard, I got melee on top. We're actually doing it on my least preferred side, but I think we probably both don't prefer this side. I'm not sure why we worked from this side, but here we are. So first off, just look at how I'm like putting my feet together to put pressure with my thigh to keep Mele's knee from like dropping down towards the ground. I don't want his hips out and his knee down towards the ground. So I'm pushing down with my feet and twisting. Imagine if you kind of like imagine my knee and my hip are being pulled in towards where the camera is. That's the pressure I'm doing there as I push outwards towards the wall and pinning to the ground with my feet, kind of like a John Wayne style sweep. Okay, so I'm trying to do that, and I try to keep that same pressure just with my right leg. And I'm going to get my hook. Now the hook he's managed to slide it down probably a little too much towards the ankle. I would want it closer to the knee. It's probably just because this is my less good side. I do happen to still escape, but it's a bit more risky doing it this way. Now it just happens that with this, I really roll backwards. So if I elevate the leg enough, I can reach underneath. I reach to the far leg, trap it. This is something I actually didn't show, but sometimes you lift the leg up enough that you can trap the far leg in essentially a lockdown, but the foot's on the other side. So it's called I think it's kind of like the electric chair position they call it. Melee escaped that, but it came back in with my feet back in front. In this clip with Michael, he's starting in the back step position. I'll get to use that same hook style sweep. So notice me trying to turn onto my right side to bring Michael's hips up. See how that lifts? If you look at where we started and trying to turn on that side, it sort of brings his hips up. I've got that pressure with my hip driving into the knee and the foot curling down towards the ground and towards the camera. This is my preferred side to play reverse half if I have to play reverse half. So I brought Michael to the side. That's allowed me, with my right leg over the top, my left foot becomes a hook. I'm holding onto the hip, trying to stop that from dropping. And then as I lift it up with that hook to try to change legs, Michael starts to scoot back out on this side, but I managed to get my right hook underneath. Okay, with that right hook underneath, I lift up. But Michael's quite flexible and quite good with his base, so he actually takes his leg off past my hook. So he kicks off my hook, or almost anyway. Now it's off the hook, and my foot's on over the top on the far side. So you can go for that lockdown style thing here, or try to. I think I try to here, but also just using it kind of like a crab ride. It helps you kind of scoot out towards the back or just to face your opponent like I did here. Another one with Michael. In this one, I'll end up trying to go for the back take, which almost backfires on me. I mean, in the end, it works out, I guess, but it's actually a good cautionary tale to show you. So again, similar things before. I'm trying to hook. Michael's got like the arm on the far side, and this time he's giving me, he's lowered a bit lower down, enough where I feel like I can go for the back. So I'm getting up on my elbow here. My elbow is probably a bit more open than I would like. I'd like him a bit lower. So he's kind of a bit too high for me to get a good purchase on the elbow. And that's where it can be risky, because if you sit up and your elbow's too open, you actually expose your back to your opponent. And so I'm trying to get up. I frame, try to readjust a little bit. And I'm definitely kind of maybe over committing with the elbow so open. But at the same time, you've got to try to get out if you feel like Michael's actually, he really likes to pass from this back step position. So it can be he's got some good stuff from there, and you've got to be wary of that. So again, bringing the elbow above the head, getting up on the elbow, and trying to scoot around to the back. Elbow much more open than I would like, but I start trying to go for it anyway. So you'll notice the other thing, and this is where it's interesting. I really want to stop Michael escaping his hips out this way, okay? And I want my right leg to do it, and Michael knows that, and that's why he's holding my pants. I cannot bring my right leg to, if you go back to technique, I actually trap that. I want to trap that leg with my right leg to like swing over the top and do that curl I was talking about. So what I end up doing instead as a secondary measure is I step on the back of the knee with my left foot and kind of slide it along, just anything to give some traction, making it difficult for the hip to come out, which has the effect I want, but not quite as good as having my right leg deep. There's no way with his arm holding my leg that I'm ever going to get my right leg where I want it. So I have to compromise a bit. So look at this. I hip out a little bit, and then I hook the back of the calf, trying to get behind the knee to stop the hips moving this way. And I'm kind of keeping tension as much as I can with that as I start trying to get up and retract my knee. And now here's this battle. His hips have moved out more than I would like. I would like his hips to be here as I scoot around, and now he's got them out much more to the side. So I try to scoot for the back, and he starts getting up too. Okay, and he starts coming around. It's kind of this battle. Whoever gets around the corner, like he wants to get around in front of me, and I want to get around towards the back. And he starts to get up a bit faster than me. So I'm definitely in a little bit of trouble here. And then Michael decides to start going for my back here. So he kind of sits down and wants to land in the twister hook. I recognize this, and I try to put my outside foot over the thigh. That prevents the back take, or at least reduces the chance they get the back. So if you're just going to step this foot over the thigh as a last minute retention tool. I actually try to take both feet over. If both feet actually landed over here, I could land on top in side control. But as soon as I realize he's blocked, exposing my back, this foot will lock in front of the thigh. Okay, there we are. Okay, that's my hook. That saved me. He would have had my back if it wasn't for this. Okay, I would have been basically right under back control. By catching that, I can use it to spin through and kind of push off. I'm getting well off track in terms of my my guard retention from reverse half guard, but it's just an interesting and cool battle to watch. So here again, as he starts to try to expose my back, I flick that foot over the top, and that allows me to push his hips away. So I end up with what is essentially a recovered guard, but definitely not in the way I would have liked it. So that's the battle. Someone high level who likes that position. Sometimes you take more sacrifices than you have to. So I started to go for it when I didn't quite have my right arm in position, and I didn't quite have enough control of his leg, and it almost really backfired on me. This time I'm starting from reverse half guard, but in starting from the worst position. So not only is Michael crossbody, but we're starting with my arm like forced above my head. So really, there's no way I'm getting my right arm back to even just be able to block his upper body. He can really lean on me, and his hips right over my shoulder as well. So this is bad positioning to start from. And you see, essentially I just escape, but not really by anything particularly good except for a scramble. It's basically Michael almost passes and I scramble out. Because if you let yourself get this bad, then and your opponent's good from there, you're going to really struggle. Okay, so You can see I'm just hanging on to the end of the foot, getting like a bit of a pinch going with my legs. And Michael's going to want to, you'll see when we're rolling, he's going to want to kick my leg, to free his foot. So he'll find some angles to start to bring his right foot here in to kick my leg. And I'm going to be using my hand, this one that's stuck on the inside. I can't use it to frame now, so I'm just going to be using it to try to like push his foot away from my legs. I keep trying to parry his foot with my legs in a moment. So I'm just kind of pinching. I have to triangle my legs right now just to, I think he even tried to wrist lock me here, but just made a good fist to stop that. So there he is. He's starting to kicking my inside leg, trying to make that lose control of, see how this leg's holding the heel? He's trying to kick that off to free his heel from that leg. Now he goes to this leg, and I'm going to use my arm to peel that foot away. There we are. Just to maintain some level of hold on the leg. Now, I basically decide that there's no way I'm going to be climbing back above the knee line or to a point where, look how high he is. Like, I'm not going to be getting my arms on the other side of his back and framing him back down to my hips anymore. So my way I can try to escape here is a back roll. So I end up like doing essentially a back roll, so almost like an invert, but it's a last ditch thing to put your opponent off base a bit. See how far he's leaning back? He's almost like falling backwards. So if you do a back roll like this, it almost like tilts him backwards. He's then going to have to bail to his knees to recover, and that's where I end up recovering myself. I get this knee in front of the shoulder, so you do need a moderate level of flexibility. You don't have to be extremely flexible. See how my knees blocked his shoulder. So we're now in like a north-south retention scenario here, where I can keep his armpit above the line of my knee. This will be in the around and under the legs passing instructional. And you can see that stops him from closing the gap on my chest, and my legs can start to work back into recover. Or you could turn to your knees if you don't have the flexibility for that.
All right, we're now covering the 3/4 mount position, which is basically, you can think of it in two ways. You're in half guard, your person on top has freed their knee and put it to the ground, and you're just basically holding on to the end of the ankle. So we're looking at now, I would say like terminal range guard retention, in terms of like, this is the last thing that you've got holding on. It's just their ankle. Everything else has been cleared. Another way to think about this is like your opponent has mount, but then the person on bottom has managed to just trap an ankle. Okay, so that's the 3/4 mount position. What are the options for the person on top? Usually they want to look for underhooks. It's very hard for them to pass without some sort of upper body control. In fact, it's a very good time for the person on top to start to kind of settle in, look for one or potentially two underhooks, and then look, once they've got that control of that space here, they work to free their feet to get into mount, or very commonly to get this side underhook, lift the hips, and drive across into the knee cut position, which is our other terminal stage passing position. So we've got two main ways we're going to recover from on bottom. One is to try to recover, actually usually our top leg, to get back in front and use that to recover. Or we can start working to bring our opponent forward and into the deep half position, where we can then recover from there. There's going to be times here where it is a good idea to pinch and squeeze your legs together. Okay, I'm going to talk about some different ways we can do this. One is just a triangle, like so. Keep in mind that you want if your opponent's foot is facing this way and you pinch your knees together, they cannot escape their foot. Okay, but if he's able to turn his foot either all the way this way or all the way the other way, he can free through that gap. Okay, so you can see it's gonna slip through my squeeze if I do that. So I need to kind of track that a little bit. If I've hooked here and Ari starts to like turn his hips, I want to like follow so that it's not just like purely side on to any sort of squeeze. Okay. Now, pinching with two legs is sometimes required, but at a certain point, you're going to want to try to move, and it's really hard to move while you're pinching with two legs. Okay, so I want one leg to move. So how do we do that? This single leg curl, if you look at this, just curling back with my hamstring, is not enough to hold Ari's leg. Free your foot, like really try. Yeah, he's going to free that foot, right? Again, if I just hamstring curl, curling back, go, it's going to free. So what I can do though, actually I'll just explain this a bit more. Ari pops off. I can only actively curl my foot to about here, right? So my heel is still a bit away from the butt. There's this much space for them to work. If I plant my toes on the ground, so I curl as much as I can, plant my toes on the ground, and then let my heel drop. See, I'm able to get my heel all the way to my butt. So I can actually generate good clamp by doing this, which I couldn't just by an active curl. Okay, so by toes going to the mat, and then your heel dropping after that, you can generate good force. So that's what we're going to do. I borrow Ari again. He's in 3/4 mount. If I can hook onto the end of the foot, point my toes, put them on the mat, and allow my heel to drop back. Okay, like this. That really pinches. So now free your foot, Ari. He should be very stuck, and my other leg can be moving and working to start to recover. Now, there's 2 other really important things to think about, and this has to do with your upper body now. So never expose your tricep. Okay, if I expose my tricep to Ari's chest, if he puts weight on that, one, he can go for a head arm, but even if he just puts his chest behind it, I cannot flatten back out because he's blocked that, and he's gonna take the back. Okay, I don't really have a block to that. So I never wanna allow my elbow to pass the midline of Ari. Okay, I wanna keep my elbow on the outside of the midline, and that's still dangerous, even a bit wider than that if possible. The other thing is underhooks. Okay, try not to give underhooks. Generally, as soon as Ari gets an underhook, I can't push or block his legs, so he can work his legs a lot freer to escape. As long as my arms are in tight, I can be blocking his legs moving forward. You can even see, if I open my legs and I'm blocking Ari's leg, he can take his leg out, but it doesn't really flick over to mount properly. It's very difficult for him to get that. Without my arms being able to do that, he's got a lot of space to work into. So particularly it's the bottom elbow that a lot of people expose. A lot of people push and they leave this elbow open, and that allows Ari to take an underhook. I want to be very good at preventing that by keeping my elbow somewhat close to my ribs when I work from here. All right, so when our opponent does get underhooks, how can we work to recover? It's very, unless he does something really silly with his placement, it's going to be very difficult to pummel with your hand first to get back. So I need to pummel my elbows, but even that is difficult from where I am. So one of the best things you can do is try to play with the position of your opponent's head. Okay, if you can't reach in front of the head, this is bad. If he's postured up a bit, it's much better if I can frame with one hand and retract my elbow with the other. But even without a frame, you can just move or try to move your opponent to open up gaps. So if I push Ari's head this way, I might get room to move this elbow. Okay, so you just see that. If I move him this way a little bit, I might get room to drop this elbow in. Okay, once one elbow's in, I can make that space a lot more available. I can block, I can come back. Be wary not to do big. I don't want to take this over here in that I'll expose my tricep. So usually you want to escape it on the same side if possible. Or if you are going for a large one, you make sure you've got enough room to tuck it back on the near side very quickly. Okay, so again, if we're here and it's all tight, often you have to bump with the shoulder and move a little bit. Okay, here I have managed to get my hand first. Okay, that's good, right? Or sometimes that will give you room for your elbow. Not in that case, it feels like the hand's going to move first and go back. So elbow or hand, either is fine. All right, so I'm going to work to escape. Now, once I get my frames in place, I'm going to work to escape back to a better guard and at least have this knee trapped. Okay. So first thing, in terms of this frame, I want to keep Ari from climbing up with his hips. Generally, that's worse, and especially around the corner. So I'm going to frame the hip, but it's not actually I'm not just blocking. I'm actually trying to push his weight out towards this side. So just posture up, all right? I'm using my elbow to kind of force him out this way as much as I can. Obviously, that's maybe not easy to do, but the more I can just get a little bit around the corner and push this way, it's going to help with the escape that I want. Okay. With my bottom arm, my left arm, I want to be pushing out at the knee, which is going to be very strong if I can push like this, like a shoulder protraction, pushing forward with my shoulder like this, with my hand flared out. Okay. I see a lot of people trying to pinch your knees together. Right? I see a lot of people trying to push like this. This is a very weak
action. Okay, if Ari pinches his knee, I am not going to open the knee like that. I want to have my hand out. Elbow's still tight to the body. It can open a little bit, but this will be very difficult. If Ari's trying to underhook this, it's close enough to my body that if he tries to, it's very difficult for him to get out. Everything's curled in, okay? Do not push with your hand, okay? As soon as you push with your hand, he gets a chance to go underneath and open up my elbow. Okay, so that kind of opens my elbow when I push my hand. I want to use my forearm like this, okay? So this is how I'm going to try to make some space. My forearm gets on the inside, elbow on the inside, and I'm knocking out to the side. From there, once I have that, I'm pretty comfortable now that Ari, when I've got all these frames in place, even if I let go of the leg, he can't really go anywhere. He can't pass into mount. It's going to give me space. So you don't have to worry about your squeeze anymore. Once we have this, I want to block and hip escape to get my top knee in. I want to go from here, move my hips backwards, so my bottom leg here will push to move my hips away, and my top leg will come in front, okay? Once my top leg is in front, then I can start to, usually Ari, he's trying to float on the top or pass, I can kind of knock up, push with my knee, and recover my foot in front, okay? So I almost get the knee in front of the stump here, again. I frame the hips out to the side, escape away, get this leg in, and I don't want to keep it here. I kind of get it right to the middle so I can push up and get my foot back in front. A big mistake, or a very common thing I see, it's not wrong, and this can be part of the sequence, but I see a lot of people push the leg into half guard, but I'm still on my side. It's so easy for Ari to push my leg and free his knee again. And this is kind of call it like an infinite loop. I see this a lot in white belt comps. Someone gets stuck under 3/4 mount. Ari's got like a crossface. I push back, he frees his knee, I push back, and it's very hard for me to recover because I'm facing the wrong way. I want to get this top leg in if I can. So if you do the same thing, it's okay to push the leg, but as he starts coming over, maybe that's my time to start getting my top leg in. I hip escape and get this leg. Now I can start to move out to the side, frame the shoulders, and start to recover. So in summary, work to get your arms to the inside, frame the hip, get your elbow inside, start to knock the hips towards the side, and use your elbow pushing out with your hand out like this, okay? From there, if you can, pushing off the bottom leg, hip escape, and get your knee in front. It's not fully a hook. Don't hook like this. This is kind of too deep and I can't lift. I actually want it more my knee, because my knee can push up and elevate as my foot comes back in front. So sometimes if Ari puts all his weight on this leg and he's kind of sitting back heavy on it, it can be difficult to move my hips and relative to that leg, okay? So we're gonna look for a deep half guard entry. This is obviously when I've still got good arm position. You need to fight for that first. So what I'm gonna do is put my knee right behind the hips. So at a certain point, again, like I might've been pinching the leg, once my arms are in place, I'm comfortable to open my legs. There's not too worried about him scooting out. In fact, if he does, bring your foot outside my legs. If he does do that, we can always just scoop it back if you need be, okay? But he's not gonna be like closing this gap too well. So from here, I'm gonna put my knee right behind the butt and knee backwards. You see that brings his hips forward. As that happens, I also wanna pummel my hand from the inside to underneath, okay? So I wanna go here, bump, and then my hand assists. I keep his hips forward, I can bump again, and I start scooting myself underneath. So we do like a little reverse hip escape here, where as I bump forward, my foot goes out, and I start bringing my hips towards my foot, okay? Like this, bumping Ari forward until he's right over the top. Now he's too high, I'll pinch just his ankle with the deep half guard, and I can start to face and recover, okay? Now it's really important with this, well, two things.
you're trying to extend their leg. So I don't want Ari to keep a bent leg. Okay, I don't want to go like, you see people trying to go like this. This is no good. I'm trying to, like as in like, see I'm moving, but his knees, his hips stay close to his heel. I really need to extend that out. So I'm pushing the knee, bumping, and see I'm like on the inside of the leg here. I walk my hips under, like the reverse hip escape. It can be a walk as well, but it's to extend the knee up. Okay. Now he's lost ability to really sit heavy anywhere lower on my body and frame and recover. So it's important as you're trying to straighten their leg out, you don't just walk with your hips facing sideways. See, I can't lift his knee up. I want to start facing my hips upwards. Okay. That starts to stretch his leg out more and get me in better position to actually start facing him to recover. Okay. So again, we're not walking like this. We're bumping forward and kind of facing up so we can recover. The other really important thing here is not to give the underhook to deep half. So why is the deep half guard good? It's good because you've got your opponent high on you and they can't get control of this space here. But if you allow an underhook, I can't keep him high relative to me. He can isolate my arm. Okay, so I want to keep my arm and elbow tucked in as I enter here. And again, I don't like to stay here. I prefer to frame and get out. But some people like to play from that position. So I want to get my arms in good position. Ari's heavy. I can't do my first escape. I'm going to bump underneath the hips here, bring his hips forward, come underneath. From here, I start to bump forward again and scoot out, locking the knee so that when I move my hips, it extends his leg. From there, I'll work back to recover. Right. One thing we need to be aware of is Ari might go for a knee cut across. Okay, so he brings his knee up and across into the cross knee through position. This is really bad if he's already got like upper body control and an underhook on this side. Okay, so if we go back, you need to just be ready for this. As soon as I have to have Ari, he would usually be closed down, but I have to kind of show, you can't see it if we're like that. So as he goes to bring that across, I want to try and bring my knee to the inside. Okay, so as he lifts up, I want to put my knee in front. He will still smash through that if my knee is vertical. So if he comes across, if my knee is vertical, he will cut right down through that. I need to get my knee facing the left. Okay, so I need to go from here, I'm framing, Ari goes to knee cut. I need to get my knee facing this way. Okay, now if he tries to knee cut, that's difficult, and I'm in a position where I can use that to recover. Okay, so do it now with a tighter position. Ari's here, he looks to knee cut. I bring my knee up and across, and I can start to frame back.
Starting from 3/4 mount. Now you're going to see some differences. It's me starting here with good positioning to later on where I start with terrible positioning and where you'll see me basically have almost no options. Okay, so here I've actually got my top arm frame and my bottom arm in on the inside of the leg. So I'm trying to work using that hooking that leg and trying to use my bottom leg to kind of scoot out and hip escape. But first trying to push this knee in and then possibly to get secondary recovery. And you can see Michael sits his weight kind of heavy over the top of that leg and the hip. So it's kind of going to be very hard for me to free this knee inside. So I might think about the deep half guard. And that's what I do. I bump forward, reach under the leg, scoot lower. And here we are. Okay, into the deep half guard and recover. Watch that one once more. You'll see my hand come through, and once my arm comes through, I bump, knee in the hips, scooting my hips underneath, deep half guard. Here, I'm starting with, at least, he's got a good underhook on my bottom arm, but at least I got my top arm framing the hip. This gives me some chance, although it's, when someone's got good pressure, they make it really hard to get your arm back. And you'll see in the next clip when I start with both arms above my head that it just sucks. So I've managed to still get some use out of that underhook. So let me just go through that. So because I've got the frame on the hip, it's hard for Michael. Doesn't want to pressure too high. It'll give me more like leverage against his hip. So he's having to stay a bit lower, and that actually allows me to use this arm to push on his leg and kind of disrupt that angle a little bit. So you can see I'm kind of reaching my left arm now onto the knee, and I managed to push it back into a half guard. That's going to make him, I've got to watch the knee cut here. I've got to watch quite a few things, but at least that's one layer back for now. Then I'm going to look for a butterfly hook. Looks like I'm looking to get underneath the leg for a butterfly hook here. I can use or to deep half guard. It's a bit dangerous going for deep half guard because of the underhook Michael has, so I make sure I hook under his leg as well, just so I can elevate. And I just managed to push and recover to single X. So this is by far the worst position to start in out of everything we worked from, which is 3/4 mount, double underhooks. I just cannot move my arms here. Like, they're just stuck. I try to move his head, and you can't, the things I talked about, like trying to off balance and free your elbow and your hand. Like, you should be trying to do that, but if they've got good pressure, especially in the gi when it's hard to free your arm, that's really difficult. So I'm basically left just trying to hold on with my legs as Michael's pummeling his legs. And if his elbows are wide, like they are, wide enough to keep base, but not so wide that I can free my arm, it's really hard for me to use any sort of fight with my upper body. So you'll see me kind of work my hands a lot trying to recover, but it's very difficult as Michael frees his legs. And I try to recover. I think I end up recovering somehow in some scramble, but it's hardly let's say a systematic way that I did it. So you can see he's really prying his leg free, and I just can't get my arms, all this space. If he frees his legs, he's got all this space to work into. So he kind of steps over. I'm still keeping my knee past the line of his ankle, so it does allow, if he squares back up, you see he's on his side, if he squares back up, I'll be able to scoop that leg again, which I think actually happens. So there we go, he squares up and I'm able to scoop that leg again. Now, I don't know whether, in a competition, whether that would or wouldn't be points there. His knee was in, his foot was technically past the line of my knee, but I didn't have it trapped, so possibly could have been. So I'm back into basically this 3/4 mount again, with no real sign that my arms are going to be freed. I'm pushing up on the lapel, trying to create some distance or tension to free my elbow. Michael kind of overcommits, and that's actually looks like where the escape. Oh no, he comes back to nearly mount out into side control. Okay, that actually gave me space to get a frame on his hip, and that's how I think I end up recovering, kind of peeling him off and getting my feet in front. But yeah, as I said, that wasn't really a systematic recovery. I'm still trying to recover onto my side here, and spin through. But I'll just look at that once more. So he's kicked off, and that as he's kind of elevated here, I think this is where I managed to get my elbow free. Which gave me some chance. It was still very much on the back foot of so there you go. My elbow's come free. I've got a chance to frame the hip now, but it's still a very bad situation to be in. I'm now basically doing a knee right or side control escape. So the lesson from that is, don't let your arms get put above your head, especially if you're against a good opponent or against anyone really. You just shouldn't accept or don't allow that to happen. Starting from 3/4 mount with my arms in, and you'll see Miele's trying to peel my hand to the ground. I don't mind this hand being in the ground as long as my elbow's tight. You're not going to get Americana'd here, although you can, if you're worried, you can use your other hand to just kind of grip fight a little bit here, just not exposing it so much that your elbow gets exposed. So I do want to make sure my elbow ends up inside his knee though. So by pinning it here has been a little bit of a problem. So you see, you probably can't see, but I'm framing his hip out to this side with my elbow. You can't really see it on this angle, but just watch his hips kind of get tilted out to the far side, to the here there on the near side, and I kind of push them out to this far side. There we go. My elbow does that. And that actually gave me the reaction I wanted to get my top knee in. So when I off-balanced him, he starts to come back, and then I get enough room to get my top knee in. There we are, and there it is. Okay, there's my top butterfly hook, sort of. I've got to watch him cutting it back across for a knee cut. So my other foot comes in front of the hip, and that stops that. In this instance, starting from 3/4 mount, but I get to start with my right arm free and my left arm, my bottom arm underhooked. And you'll see as Mile tries to peel over the top, I managed to take my bottom leg up. So I've managed to trap him essentially in the regular half guard, but he's got this foot over the top. So I changed my foot to being a hook. So instead of trapping in the half guard, my own foot becomes a butterfly hook as well. Okay, so now I'm basically back to a half butterfly. I can try to elevate. If I get that elevation. Again, look, it's not a hook right at the, like I'm not hooking right at the leg. That's actually poor leverage. He can sit heavy on my hook there. I want to be just with my knee. My knee can kind of, it's more like my knee pushing away from my chest rather than my foot pushing upwards. And that's what's going to elevate. Well, maybe a little bit of both, but there we go. Okay, that's what elevates him. My knee pushing up. And I make a bit of space to recover. So here you're going to see me get past Mile starting with 2 underhooks. So again, don't let them take 2 underhooks. It's very hard to block. Okay, it's not as bad as when Michael started with, managed to get my arms like above my head. At least my arms are a bit lower. So maybe you can use your hand to block things, but still it's very difficult. And the difference I think in no gi is it's very hard. With the gi, I can kind of grip onto the lapel and push up and create some sort of like counter pressure, but I can't do that in no gi. So in this scenario, Mile with 2 underhooks, I'm trying to get my arms back, trying to hold on to the leg, and he's going to manage to peel his foot in and free his foot. And it's very hard for me to hold on. I try to counter, but he drops his knees down and kicks out. Here I try to pick up the leg, catch it again. So that's where like having my hand in enough is okay. But again, he's still in those underhooks. He can peel my arm away, go at it again, and he actually will pass. So the answer here, watching Michael and Mile's rolls, when they get both my arms above the head, so especially if you're rolling with good black belts, don't let yourself get put in that position. It's, you can get out. It is possible, but it sucks.
All right, now we've got the terminal stage knee cut. And what are the options for Ari here? Well, he usually just wants to attach to my upper body and then free his foot. That's his last point towards ending up in side control. Sometimes he can work over back into 3/4 mount as well. Okay, that is another option to lift that knee back across to the other side. Now, what are my options? If I can, I want to frame away. So I can eventually try to either get up and start to escape, or potentially to get an underhook. Okay, if I get an underhook, this can be good for me, as we'll discuss in a moment. So the knee cut position here is obviously a very, very bad position to be caught in if you're here on bad terms. It can actually be a decent position to be in if you have the underhook and you're on your side. So if I happen to get my underhook and if this elbow's in good position, then this is actually quite decent positioning for me. Whereas if Ari has an underhook and he has control of this arm, this is really bad for me. Okay, so we'll talk about fights to get our underhook and how to prevent control of this arm in a moment. One other thing that's really important is I want to ideally have my knee, see where Ari's ankle is. So I'm pinching his ankle. I kind of have to pinch his leg. If I don't pinch, I've got nothing here. Okay, so I'm just going to be pretty much squeezing my knees together like so. Okay, you can cross your feet, but the strength comes from just a squeeze. Okay, I want to also have my thigh underneath his hip. Okay, so he's a bit more elevated, because if I can bring him forward, then that's really good for me. If you happen to end up where you don't have your foot underneath, this is going to be very difficult to even just hold on to. See, I can't even get access to pinch his leg. It's going to be really difficult. So obviously Ari can control this arm. If he grips the sleeve, I'm going to want to keep this arm out of being pulled up. When he pulls up on this arm, I can't get on my side. Okay, so it keeps me flat. At very best, like if I already passed, but I was on my side, like he frees his leg, here I still have a chance of blocking and framing and recovering. But with this arm lifted up and being flat on my back, this really sucks. So I really want to be facing him. So I need to deal with this. If he grabs the sleeve, I'm going to try to circle it. Okay. In no-gi, it's more likely to be a elbow grip like so. Okay, this could be a grip in the gi too. If that's the case, I want to block, bring my elbow above my head like so, and then I can get up and tuck it back underneath me. So one thing I can do, if I hold on to this knee, it can stop Ari from sliding his knee out this way. Okay, so if I allow his knee to slide and his hip to drop, sometimes that's a way that people will free their knee. Okay. Now, it's not doesn't make you safe from the knee cut. Sometimes he can still take his foot out if I allow him to. So I still don't want him to be able to free his leg in this case. But it can be a good way of preventing the leg from fully disengaging. Now, if in the gi, if your opponent has picked up the elbow, I can't really break this grip. Okay, like obviously no gi, I can swim above, but in the gi, this is really stuck. Okay, so you're gonna have to forget about trying to break that and almost just frame and hope that you can start to get a knee shield in the front of that. Okay, same thing goes for this arm if it's holding my collar. Sometimes people will underhook, sometimes they'll push the shoulder down holding the collar. It's very hard to break this, and I don't want to put all my energy on that and then get stuck. So I'm actually better off kind of trying to frame against that in this scenario and try and get my knee back in front. If Ari goes underhook, it's going to be very hard to pummel back this way. I'm really going to look to try to turn belly down. Okay, so in a scenario like this, if he's got a deep underhook, I'm going to look to control the bicep, get space to tuck my head. I don't want my head to get caught when I'm about to do this move. So as long as I'm blocking and creating space, I can start to turn and bring my arms above my head here. Okay, like this, pretty much belly down. So it looks bad. I'm basically giving my back, but Ari can't take my back because the leg's caught. Okay, so he tries to, because of this leg, he needs this leg on the other side of my body to be on my back. All right, it's still dangerous, like if I just waited here, but he'd probably eventually free that, but we're going to be moving. Okay, so again, if Ari's got a deep underhook, like so, I'm going to be looking to get inside space, open my elbow so I can put my head on my elbow as like a pillow defense as I swim my arm through and under. Okay, so now that I'm here, I have room to start to work my underhook back. Okay, I'm going to build up my base, sit back, pummel my elbow back underneath and start to reach for the underhook. Now I have good positioning. Once I got the knee, underhook, you can actually start to attack, come forward and try to get on top. So again, if Ari gets the underhook and I can block this arm enough to get my space to get my arm through, I swim my arm over, turn belly down, put my elbow through this gap as I build my base up, and I come back to an underhook where I can start to go on the offense. One option, if you do manage to block this far arm, especially with two hands, or if you can block it enough that he doesn't control my arm here and lift it up. So I either circle that grip or break it, and I get to the point where my left arm now can intercept that arm. I can often start to build base up onto my elbow. From here, it's actually kind of hard for Ari to pass around. If he frees himself from the position, it's still hard to control my upper body because this arm's out of the picture. Okay, so I can start to scoot my hips back now and start to recover my legs. Once more. We end up in the knee cut position. You manage to circle grips and block this far arm, anywhere from the shoulder down to the bicep. Swim your arm above your head, move your torso away, and start to build up. Okay, could be on the elbow, could be on the hand. From here, I let him outside the guard, scoot away, and start to come back. If you ever see space for a knee shield, it kind of goes in the same frame of mind, but if you ever get a chance to bring your knee in front, this is going to be even better. But it is a risk, okay? Because when you open your legs to go for the knee shield, sometimes they drop through or pass out before you actually get a chance to put your knee in front. So you'd only really go for that if you saw there was a chance to get that knee in front, right? Otherwise, we're going to be working from reaching, building up our base, letting them free, scooting away, and recovering. Sometimes your opponent will get a crossface, which obviously is bad. It's going to be very hard to, I can't like frame off this crossface anymore. I'm flat on my back and he's deep into a knee cut. What can I do? Often, all I can reach for here is this far knee, okay? And I'm going to try to off balance Ari this way, because usually he's trying to be tight. You know, he's keeping a good tight underhook. So if I just reach over the top of his lat, under the knee, sometimes you can start to tilt them this way, okay? And then as they start, even it's very rare to sweep with that, but it often gives a little bit of space. Okay, so again, if I go for this and Ari, just keep your base as you normally would. I go for this, he keeps his base. Sometimes I can then push and start trying to bring my bottom leg past that leg. Okay, if I trap above the knee here, it becomes difficult for Ari to continue a knee cut. I can wrap him up and actually end up in somewhat of a good position to get an underhook. So again, very late here. You know, all I've got is the pinch. Obviously, this isn't going to work if we're here, but if your knee's underneath, a little kind of bump forward and a tilt to the side, okay? It probably won't work just tilting, stay heavy, okay? I can't just tilt, but a little bump and tilt, and then if that doesn't work, try to push the knee and capture it here will often work, okay? So that's how I tend to approach from cross face. So in summary, really try to make sure your knee gets underneath their butt. Otherwise, most of this is going to be extremely unlikely to work. If we're able to control the far arm well, we can often get up and start to retract our leg and recover. Okay. If Ari's a bit too close, for example, he's got an underhook, I'm not going to be able to get up through this, but if I can block that far arm, I can swim through and start trying to get my underhook back that way. If he's got really good control, which we need to just continue fighting for this arm. If he manages to control these, then our best bet is really just framing and trying to get a knee shield in front to try to recover. And if he gets a crossface, then we often try to off balance to the side and mix that with trying to trap this leg. So a knee bump forward to bring him forward a little bit, off to the side, and then try to push that leg and bring our foot over the top in front of the thigh.
All right, starting from a very deep cross knee through, Michael has a good deep cross face. You can see he's connected his hands and a good underhooks. This is bad. Again, very bad positioning for me. So I reach over I think to his belt, or it could be the far lat and to the far leg. You probably can't see, but I want to try and tilt him towards the camera if I can. He kind of feels that, and he bails on that particular position. But now there's a little bit of space. Hopefully, I want to create enough space to be able to reach over his head and start to work for an underhook. But his head stays, you can see he's actively kind of almost pinching between his head and his shoulder to make it hard to move my arm over like that. And he's starting to fight for my bottom arm again, which I must have freed my bottom arm for a moment. So see how I tried to take my arm over, but he followed it with his head. So he's tracking that really well. Again, I sit up to give myself more space. I kind of sit up and then drop. I sit up and then drop to try to get my arm free, but he's tracked it every time. Trying to work a little bit of an off balance to force that to happen. So I might have felt here that his hips were far enough back. I might get a knee shield in because I opened my legs and tried to put this knee in front. Let's see. Yeah. There we are. Yeah, that knee shield's coming in front. So that's going to give me a good chance. Michael sprawls on that to try to get around. So there's about to be a scramble, I think. I take my arm over now. That's giving me room. As he sprawled out, it gave me room to free my arm. Turn. And I'm kind of in this position where I end up rolling through to recover. All right, so that was interesting again. Let's just have a look at that knee shield. So because of the posture Michael's taking here, you can see like here that I wouldn't be able to get the knee shield, but he kind of settles back a bit as I start sitting up. See his hips moved back a bit. I must have sensed there was just enough room to try to get a knee shield. So I bring my knee high and a few little wiggles. I get my knee in and then I try and free this arm second. There we go. And then I'm in this position where I have to roll through to recover. Another example of starting with the knee cut, allowing Michael to start with a good deep crossface. So you can see he reaches through and he puts like a lot of weight into that head. This is a good pressure on top. So you'll see me try to off balance him. I'm using just my top leg to kind of curl back to keep his knee in. And I'm going to try to off balance him once or twice here. There we are, but it didn't move him much. You know, he's kind of more forward than driving sideways. So he's not trying to. It means he's not trying to drive me flat too much, which might give me more chance. If he's not trying to drive me flat, I might have more chance of bringing my arm over. But his head still blocks my arm, and that's a real problem with this. And the crossface, you know, you can't bring your arm over while the crossface is there. Now he's let go of the crossface. So by me like pushing on that leg, he's lost the crossface. That makes me start thinking about. So if you look at that, when I start pushing on this near leg, trying to push that knee back between my legs to kind of push him back one layer, he starts stopping cross-facing and start trying to deal with that arm. But that gives me a chance to free my top arm, or to try to. So there we go. Now he's having to go back and stop. See how I pushed his knee back one layer? Now his knee's gone back behind my knee. He has to push that with his hand, my knee, so that his knee comes over the top. And while he's thinking about that, I'm hoping to get my arm back over and re-pummel an underhook. So I'm going to try that in a moment. There we are. But he's ready. You know, he knows to track that. Try again, and this time I'm successful. So my arms come back in front now. I really don't want him to get stuck behind my arm. It's hard to see that, but I really don't want him to stay stuck behind my arm. I want to make sure there's a clear path so my elbow can come back through this gap as an underhook. So there's a bit of a battle going on for the position of the arm. You can't really see it, but I'm working to like scoot backwards and bump him forward with my top leg and try and make him lose control of that. He's gone into a reverse half guard, and I've managed to kind of push up and elevate. Starting from a deep knee cut with Miele, he's done a slightly different approach. So he's gone deep underhook and head on the near side. Okay, so I'd be looking if I can to try to frame this arm somehow. If I can free my arm, frame his arm, and pummel my arm over the top onto the far side. So there we are. Frame the shoulder and start freeing this arm. Okay, there we go. Frame. There we are. Okay, now that frame is in place, I can start trying to pummel my left hand. I'm trying to go underneath that. Looks like it might be difficult, but pushing on the shoulder I'm slowly getting somewhere. You know, he's keeping very tight with his head, making that difficult, all while I'm just trying to pinch on and hold on here. So most of the fight's happening at the upper body right now. So still pummeling. Okay, now I've managed to get my right arm over. Can you see my left arm? That's managed to come to the other side of the head. We didn't really get to see how that happened, but now that arm is over the other side. I'm framing and I tuck it in by my side, and you should see it pop through here. There's my elbow, and I now have my underhook, and I'm now in more of an offensive position.